We made this.
Hello and welcome to Life's Milestones, the podcast about naming ceremonies and birth, relationships and weddings, and death and funerals, right here on the We Made This podcast network. My name's Mark Adams and I am your host. I am a Humanist Celebrant. That means I am accredited and trained to write and perform non-religious ceremonies, everything from naming ceremonies to marriages to funerals to anything that marks a milestone in somebody's life. Every fortnight I interview a different guest with the same questions about their life's milestones. We talk about their childhood, we talk about their marriage if they've had one, and we look into the future about what they would like for their funeral. And the guest this time is a friend of mine I've known for nearly 10 years, Rob Maltman. I met Rob when we were both wrestling ring announcers, and there was never that rivalry between us really. We got on so well that we were the kind of people that were pleased with each other's success rather than jealous, and we did get to work together quite a few times as well, which was always the best times, because Rob is an interesting character with some fascinating stories to tell. And I'm so glad I managed to get Rob on board for Life's Milestones because he just doesn't disappoint. Rob currently works outside of wrestling. He moved on a couple of years ago and he works for Superstar Speakers. So he interviews footballers, boxers and other sports stars that I will be honest, I probably haven't heard of many of them. But he's the kind of guy who meets people's heroes, and he has such an interesting job, but he's such an interesting guy himself. So I really hope you enjoy my interview with Rob Maltman. With me at this time is Rob Maltman. Hello, Rob.
Hello, Mark. Thank you for welcoming me today.
So you are my 14th guest on Life's Milestones, and
Amazing.
Before we get into the heavy stuff and the interesting stuff, I'm going to do the usual little bit of guest profile. So first up, it's quite a personal question, but you know, this is a personal podcast. How old are you?
I am 40 years old.
40 years old. Did you have a lockdown birthday?
Yeah, 40. Yeah, I did. It was June the 30th this year. I just came to work with a balloon and had a caterpillar cake because I'm obviously 40.
At least you had a caterpillar cake, though.
Of course I did.
Brilliant.
Yeah, I get to a point, Mark, that like I'm halfway through now, like, and birthdays don't mean as much to me as they did before. Like 40 was a nice special one, but you know, so be it.
Yeah. So where are you from and what's your background?
I am from a town called Kettering in Northamptonshire, which is probably most famous for these days of being the home of comedian James Acaster. Kettering Town FC are the football club that scored the most goals in the FA Cup and the first football club to have a sponsorship on the front of their shirts. So up the poppies.
Huh.
I know, right? It's cool. It's a cool little stat. It's a very much middle of the country town. The predominant business there is warehousing because you're right in the middle of the A14. So you're 3 hours from pretty much anywhere in the country.
Right.
It's average little town, little market town in the middle of the country in a nice little Northamptonshire is a lovely county. And that's where I'm from. That's my background. My background personally, I'm from traditional little family, mother, father, brother, sister. I've got a brother from my dad's first marriage. Traditional little 2.4 kids. Dad was a baker. Mother was in childcare in a nondescript town. It's that proper cliche classic thing. And I've developed from that to going to university to studying media, to working as a radio presenter, who then graduated into professional wrestling, which is where we met as an MC.
That's right.
I graduated from that into the after dinner speaking circuit and doing theatre shows and hotel shows and events with retired sportsmen, predominantly footballers, but boxers, cricketers, and I still do a little bit of announcing. I do boxing, kickboxing and MMA announcing now as well. So that's who I am, with a little splashing of digital marketing and web development just to kind of like make the most of what I can do.
Yeah, and I think I was trying to avoid my wrestling contacts to have just to have too many of them on the show. I mean,
Of course.
because I don't want to say, and I've got another ring announcer coming on next week. But you've progressed and done something really, really interesting. And I'm not a football fan. I'm not a memorabilia fan. But
No.
the way you are passionate about what you do is very similar to how I feel about my celebrant work, which is why I thought that you would be the perfect guest to have on about this.
You will actually find a very significant part of my life ties in with my career that we'll talk about on this podcast. And I've told a few people about this story, but I've never really said it on a podcast. But as with everything, important parts of my life have dictated my path through life. So that's something we'll definitely talk about on this podcast. It's a nice little story. I don't know how much of it is I've embellished and made nicer over the years, but that's the wrestling background again, I guess.
I've been 6'1", even though I'm actually 6 foot my entire life.
Yeah, I think I only weigh 13 stone in wrestling world as well.
Okay, so we're going to move on to the section about birth. So we know you were born in Kettering, and tell me the story of your birth.
Do you know what, right? This is quite hard for me because there was nothing really spectacular about it. Like, my dad was in his 30s. My mum was 20 when I was born. It was my dad's second marriage. He had a second roll of the dice in life and he set up another little family. And I was the third member of that little family, I guess. He always wanted to get it right, as it were. And here I am. Like, I'm a very, very lucky man. I had a wonderful father, a lovely mother, and I was the first baby of 3 with them 2. And it's no more or no less than that, Yeah,
and so you were the first in line. So you were the golden child, like me.
I'm not sure my mother would agree that I'm the golden child. But, yeah, I think, you know what it's like. Like I said, I don't want to ever take away from the fact my father was married beforehand. I've got a brother who I love dearly from that marriage, and him and his wife and his 3 kids are very much a big. But I was that. My dad started again almost, and I was that one there.
Yeah, I suppose it is very, very different for me. Being the oldest, I saw how my parents tried to make everything incredibly, meticulously fair. And everything I had, my brother had it exactly the same age as I had it and stuff like that. Whereas I guess it's a little bit more complicated in a family like yours.
Well, my older brother, we're from Kettering. My older brother is in Newcastle because my dad came down from Newcastle to start this second life here. So I didn't really have that. For all intents and purposes, I was the oldest child in this thing. But, yeah, my parents were treated us individually. My parents were like, well, that's Robert. He does that. That's David. That's what he does. That's Kerry. She's the girl. She does this. And we just were treated as our individual people. It was never what they wanted us to be, per se. It was just, well, that's who he is. That's what he does. I think they'd have liked it if we'd have followed a similar path to them because that's what they understood. But actually, it was very understanding to the point of let us follow our own path. So I went to university. I didn't get out of education until I was 23. My brother left school at 16, got a job, and it was never victimized on either side. It was never, well, you're doing the right thing, you're doing the wrong thing. That's, it was never like that. It was just, well, that's what David's doing, that's what Robert's doing, and so be it.
So can you actually bake?
Yeah, I'm amazing at it.
Brilliant.
Swear to God. Right? My dad loved baking. His job was, before he'd make wedding cakes. He would make wedding cakes by hand. These real fantastic, beautiful, ornate, handcrafted flowers out of icing. He would spend hours studying plants and making. He was proper old school textbook artist, amazing. And he always said to me, I'm going to teach you how to bake because you'll always have a skill in life. People will always want bread. People will always want cake. And if you can do that, you've always got something.
Good grief.
And I make fantastic. And my speciality is Millionaire's brownies. So it's like a brownie base with triple chocolate with caramel on and then a chocolate top as well. And my dad always used to say to me as well, when I was a bit older, you can bake cakes, you'll always get girls. You've always got something. Because women love cake. If you can knock out a handcrafted cake, you'll always get a girl. If no one takes anything else out of this podcast, that is true. That is absolutely true. Like, love the cake.
I have known you all this time, and I didn't know that you made a mean cake.
You know, I'm not blowing my own trumpet. I am amazing at it. When I was working in the office in a previous job before I took the leap to do this, I worked in a tile place, and it was very much like marketing and home decor and that home living mentality. I used to go to all the shows, like the Good Home show. And I went with our interior designer, and we were looking at all the cakes. So I can do that. She goes, no, you can't. So I can do that. So I knocked up a batch of brownies for the girls in the office. And they were literally like, you need to get on Bake Off. Like, these are amazing. One girl actually said it was the nicest thing she's ever had in her mouth, which I'm not quite sure how to take that, but it was, yeah, I'm good. I'm good at what I can do. I can bake.
Well, I've learned something new about you today, Rob.
There you go, right? There you go. Master baker.
Well, I've been distracted by cake. Tell me your favourite story about your childhood.
Do you know what, right? You sent me the notes through to this, and I don't remember any of it. I was just looking at this, and like, my childhood was a good childhood. My parents loved me. Dad's son, like, very close to my dad. But it was nondescript. It was a little mini town, 2.4 kids. We had holidays. My brother is my best friend. I adore my sister to bits. But there's no real, like, definitive story of it. It was just a happy childhood. Do you know what I mean? There's no tragedy that's formed who I am. There's no, like, real light bulb moment that's made me who I am. It was just a consistently happy childhood.
That's sickeningly lovely. But have you not got a funny story? Something you did that was really dumb? Like, I fell down a hole.
I did all my dumb stuff in my adult life.
Oh, well, yeah. I fell down a hole, right? And it was a manhole. And I was stuck there for 3 hours and I cried. Have you not got, like, even the dumbest story that you can share?
No, I haven't got a bit of it. Honestly, I don't remember a single bit of my childhood.
Good
I
grief.
don't remember any of it. I was always a good boy. I was always a good boy at school. I always worked hard, studied hard, did my best. I was boring, man. I never really, like... You hit me like a sledgehammer to the face. I'm telling you now. Like, I was just a dull little kid. I was shy. I was reserved. I was withdrawn. I wouldn't talk to people. I was nervous. I was diagnosed with ADHD as a child as well because I was not who I am today. My life transformed when I got into radio because I could show my personality in the safety of a studio behind a microphone. That really was a transforming point for me. But you're talking like that was college then. I was 17, 18.
Right. So, do you have children yourself?
I have one child. I have a 12-year-old daughter.
Okay, and when she was born, did you have a naming ceremony, a christening, or any other ceremony to welcome her into the world?
We had a christening, as it happens. Now, this is a weird thing because her mother was raised Catholic, even though she's not really a practicing Catholic or, if anything, she's a lapsed Catholic.
Right.
But she's very serious to the point she wanted our daughter raised into the church and accepted into that family. And we went to a little village church where Amelia, my daughter, eventually went to school. And we had a little ceremony. We had a christening ceremony there.
Right. And so, how did it go? Was there any funny stories that you can tell us?
Do you know what it was, right? I'm not really a religious man. I very much thought to the point of christening to being welcomed into the church. It's almost hypocritical because I'm not a practicing Christian. We're going to welcome into the church. I'm not going to go to the church every Sunday. I'm not going to be a part of that community. And I felt it was kind of hypocritical to welcome myself into this church where I knew I wasn't going to be part of the community. Like the Sikhs have a naming ceremony, which is called Naam Quran. It would be akin to me having one of those.
Right.
Or be akin to me having a bar mitzvah as a man, even though I'm not a Jewish man. But it's a religious ceremony that I felt like I was a fraud doing it.
Right.
But when I got in the church and we did this ceremony and I've met the community, I was touched. It was a wonderful thing because you're meeting all these people who all know each other, who all grew up with each other, and the sense of warmth and charity and community and love that I felt when I walked into there, and it was full of people and the kids were singing and they were really proud of themselves for singing, and the parents and the grandparents were watching it. I thought, these parents were singing this 30 years back, and the grandparents were the parents then, and you could just see generations of families, and I felt something when I was in there. Now, I'm not going to say we're talking like the Blues Brothers, I've seen the light. It wasn't like a religious experience. I felt the warmth, and I understood for that moment in time why people would do this and be part of their community, and the positives that can come of it.
I think you're absolutely right, and I think that ceremony and social aspects of the church are some of the most positive things you can really experience. And I love that you said that, because you went in cynical and you came out feeling like, even though it wasn't for you, you'd seen something very positive. I get that all the time on the flip side. So religious folk come into my ceremonies going, I don't think this is going to be any good. And they come out and they're like, I mean, I've been called a number of things. That was lovely, minister. Thanks.
Yeah.
And someone else, what do I call you? Celebrant. Can I call you vicar? No. And but you can call me anything as long as it's polite, I suppose. But I don't see what the problem is with celebrant, you know. But I love how you kind of experienced the opposite side. Did you talk to the priest? Did you thank him?
It was a her.
Okay.
But yeah, I did. I went and said thank you very much, because I'm going to put on here now that we were talking about beforehand. I'm not a religious man, but I'm fascinated with religion. And like I told you, I studied religion as my minor subject at university, and I've studied all different religions and and it fascinates me as a subject, because it's a subject that I haven't had the gift of religion unlocked inside me, if you want to put it that way. And people say it's a faith. It's something I haven't been gifted with yet, if at all. But it fascinates me. It's a world that I am not a part of, but I could understand it from that point of view. But it hasn't changed the fact that I'm still not a regular churchgoer. I'm still not an active Christian or whatever. But it was a wonderful thing, and the ceremony was beautiful. And I spoke to the vicar, and she was lovely. And I even went back a couple of Christmases and saw, like, because my daughter was in the choir because of the school, so I went back and did the Christmas thing as well, and that was gorgeous, man. That was a beautiful. I mean, I'm jaded as anything. I'm 40-year-old. Like, I've worked in retail at Christmas. Like, I'm not the biggest. I'm not a lover of it, but it was gorgeous, man. It was beautiful.
And so, if you were to have another child, do you think you would do the same, or would you look at a naming ceremony, or would you not do it this time?
Personally, I probably wouldn't do it for the reasons that I said before. I'd feel like a bit of a fraud. I mean, what's the difference having a christening and having a Nam Quran, like I said, or the Buddhist naming ceremony or anything like that? To me, there's no difference between choosing a religious path. It just happens to be Christianity, which is a bit more common here in the UK. A naming ceremony, I will put in the same bracket as those. If you want to have a naming ceremony, go ahead, have one, enjoy it, get your friends, your family together and celebrate a new birth and a new life and a new member of the family and a new generation of a family. But for me, it would depend on what the mother wanted as well.
Right.
I'm not fussed. Does that make sense? Like, I don't believe it's going to affect my child or future child or this imaginary hypothetical child that's coming along. I don't think it's going to make a difference to their life in any way, shape or form.
No, perhaps not. I guess at that point in time, it is for the family. It's a time for celebration.
Yes.
Yeah.
And that I get. I really enjoy the community spirit of it and the gathering and the celebration. Like to have the next generation of your family come through that's a lovely thing. That is a lovely, lovely thing.
We've not been able to do naming ceremonies really, because they are restricted to 6 rather than 15 or 30 like weddings. So it was basically no naming ceremonies. So it's going to be very strange.
There's going to be a baby boom coming up because there's couples getting locked down with nothing else to do.
Not just that though. We're going to have a generation of naming ceremonies for these toddlers that might remember their naming ceremonies if the families decide to have them after lockdown. The kids are going to
Yeah.
be 1, 2, 3. And whilst we do have those kind of ceremonies, and a lot of the time adoption ceremonies are incredibly powerful, but we're going to have these ceremonies for kids that might have some kind of memory of them. And that'll be a weird lockdown thing.
It's not a bad thing, though.
No, not at all. I'm looking forward to it.
No.
Can't wait
Like,
to do naming
toddlers,
ceremonies
toddlers
again.
are an absolute joy. Toddlers and kids are an absolute joy. They're just little people with no social graces whatsoever. They're an absolute hilarious joy. Like, you'll be, well, I'll say pulling your hair out, but like it's gonna be.
Thanks for that, Rob.
Anytime, mate. Anytime. It's gonna be chaotic, and what a celebration that would be. What happy memories the family will have of, like, do you remember when he got his bum out at the naming ceremony, or like picking his nose? You know, the stupid things like that are gonna happen.
Absolutely right. Okay, so we're going to move on to talk about weddings. First question is, are you married?
I am not.
Okay, so do you potentially want to get married or believe in marriage?
You've caught me at a very interesting, like, crossroads in life, actually, because I've always been a believer in you can have anything you want in life, but you can't have everything. And even as a kid, I remember saying to my mother as a kid, I'm never going to get married. I don't want to get married. I'm not interested in being married. And I've spent my adult life focused on finding myself and working out who I am as a person and what I want to be. And I've had this lofty goal of working in this wonderful business that I'm in, that really the life I lead when you're at theatres at weekends and travelling UK and Ireland at weekends, you can't really have a wife because they're not going to enjoy that. Can we go away this weekend? No, we can't. I'm in Ireland with Ryan Giggs. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Well, it's never really been something that I've wanted to have in my life. I mean, in all the, 10 years, say, that you've known me, have you ever known me to be dating? Have you ever known me to bring a partner? Have you ever known any part of that side of me at all?
No. Actually, I wouldn't have. It wouldn't have been something that I'd have said. You know, Rob's the guy that's never got a girlfriend, lol.
Nope.
But
No, absolutely.
But now
But
you've
Rob is
said
the guy
it.
that
Huh.
I have been a very driven single man, focused on my career and getting where I am today. And this year, rolled the dice. I've took the risk. I'm doing the job. COVID's come along and said, not this time, sunshine. It ain't happening. But I'm now at a point where I'm kind of comfortable in my life. And it's like, maybe do I want to do that? But then I'm 40, meet a girl, date her a year, 18 months, then look at getting married. 45, 50 to get married? Is there any point?
Oh, I don't know. Some of the loveliest weddings I've done have been for older folk.
Yeah, exactly. It's one of them things, Mark, that if I got to my deathbed, having never been married, never been engaged, I'd be all right with it.
Right.
I'm very used to being my own man, very used to being single, being on my own, enjoying my own company. I'm a bit of a workaholic. I have, in the real world, in the normal world, an obscure job that, as I said, takes me all over the country, potentially all over the world if things go well. And I want to be able to do that. I want to be able to say, right, we're going Norway, doing the Manchester United Legends Tour in Norway, or we're going Amsterdam, doing the Dutch Football Legends Tour in Amsterdam. We need you to go away for a week. I want to be able to say yes. I don't want to be able to say, oh, it's the wife's birthday, or it's our anniversary, or I've got to do this, or blah, blah, blah. I mean, the flip side of that is you might find a wife who fully gets it and fully accepts it and knows that's the life that he lives and might even want to come along.
I think you're looking at it very kind of practically and matter-of-factly, that if you meet the kind of person that will marry you knowing that you ain't gonna change, then you'll marry her, I suppose.
I think so. I mean, I spoke to my mum about this a few years back now. I said, do you think I'll ever get married, Mum? And she went, you need to find someone who's going to love you more than you love yourself. And I was, oh, okay. That's, you know, the honesty of a mother, I guess.
It's good advice, but it's pretty sassy.
Well, welcome to the world of Mrs. Maltman. And that was it. And it's like I said, you can have anything you want in this life. You can't have everything. And I did used to have, in my 20s, possibly my 30s, a very negative look at marriage and a very negative attitude towards marriage. You only ever heard people moan about being married, and I never heard anyone say they enjoyed being married. Just, oh, I'm so really glad I got married. Like, I always have more people come to me and say, God, I wish I'd do what you did, than the other way around. So, like, but then the grass is always greener, I guess.
To be fair, you did socialise with a lot of wrestlers.
Yeah, right. There is that. There is that. And marriage wasn't really a hot topic in the wrestling locker room.
No. So you're now a mellowed Maltman. A mellow
I am.
Maltman.
I'm 40, man. Like,
right.
I'm that tragic old man, you know.
So in the kind of idea that you might potentially get married in future if you meet the right woman, what would be involved in your perfect wedding?
I don't know. I would want it to be unique. Like, part of me really gets my heckles up when I see a couple who spend 20, 30 grand on a wedding day when I know they're struggling to pay their bills at home. And, like, I've been to some beautiful weddings and I've seen love in its purest form and some beautiful brides and some handsome grooms, and I've seen happy families and that big celebration we were talking about before. But for me, I don't know. I don't know what it would be. And there's a weird thing as well. Like, when my sister got married, my dad made the wedding cake for her. Now,
Brilliant.
Right. Now, there's 4 of us, 3 boys. The youngest one is my sister. And my dad had throat cancer in 2002, I'm going to say.
Good grief.
And he always said, the reason I'm going to pull through this is I'm walking your sister down the aisle. Right. And he did. And he walked her down the aisle. He made the wedding cake. He'd made both brothers' wedding cakes. He made my sister's one, and he went, that's the last wedding cake I make. That's me done. And you're like, oh no. Where does that leave me? You know what I mean? So it's like, it's a very perfect, that's a lovely thing, right? And where does that leave me? Like, he's not going to make me a wedding cake now because he passed away 5 years back. But you know, when you're just like, it's such a wonderful thing.
I think potentially his legacy could make your wedding cake. You could make your own wedding cake. He's given you those skills. And his wedding cake could live on through you.
Because you wouldn't even hold a candle to his work. You wouldn't hold a candle to it. I don't know, man. Like, it's not on the big list of priorities. I've got a list. I've set myself a few challenges for the new year. I really want to get one of my interviews on Sky Sports, for example. I really want to do an edit for Soccer AM. And bear in mind, these aren't unrealistic goals, by the way. It's part of what I do for a living. They're not unrealistic. And I want to do some graphic work or some work for a celebrity. Like we do, the company I work for now, we're the exclusive signing agent for Brian Robson, the former Manchester United captain. Right, he won't sign for anyone else other than the company we work for. So I'm like, I want to do something with that for Robson. I want to maybe do like a picture of him or a montage picture of him to say, I did that. I made that.
Yeah.
So like, they're my goals for the new year. Whereas meeting a woman and getting married and having a perfect wedding, it's not really, I'm still a little bit focused on myself as opposed to, maybe I've gone too far, Mark. Maybe I've focused on myself too much. Like, I can't pull back and slow down and get married. Maybe it's COVID madness. Maybe I've lost it. It's like, I'll get married. Oh, check on Rob, he's ill.
You don't know what the future holds, mate.
I don't. And that is a wonderful, wonderful thing. I might just walk out the office today, meet a girl, and she might ruin all of those plans.
You might want to put it a bit more subtly when you kind of talk to her about that particular issue.
Yeah. Did you do any podcasts recently, Rob? Nah, none. Not one. Nothing.
Right, I'm going to get something out of you. I want you to pick what song you would like for your first dance.
First song dance. I think it would be an Elvis Prestley song. Probably go the cliche of Can't Help Falling in Love with You. Elvis is a big, big deal in my family. My dad's a big Elvis fan. When he left his first wife, he left my brother his Elvis collection, and it's become this anchoring point of what my dad means to. I've got a little Elvis Presley tattoo on my shoulder, which just reminds me of my dad and my brothers and that relationship we all have around Elvis. And I think that would be a nice tribute to the man. And you can't go wrong with Elvis. Like, he's the original and best, isn't he? So let's say Elvis Presley, I Can't Help Falling in Love.
Well, that's bloody lovely. See, you can do the romantical stuff, Rob.
I can do it. You can have anything you want. Yeah, I can. I like things to have meaning. I like everything in my life to have a meaning or a story or something about it rather than just ownership of a thing.
That makes a lot of sense, man.
Yeah.
Okay, so we're going to now move on to talk about death.
Yes.
This is obviously quite a serious part of the podcast, but it doesn't have to be. I firmly believe that as I've done this podcast, that I'm working towards knocking down the walls of the taboo that is talking about death. So all these questions are straight in your face. The first one is, are you scared of death?
No, I'm not. And I think this is where I'm going to come into my own, actually. I'm not scared of death. I'm scared of dying without completing what I want to do.
Right.
I'm scared of dying unfinished. Scared's the wrong word, because I'm going to die one day. Like, we all are. It's going to happen. It's a natural part of life. So, like, I'm not scared. I just don't really want to do it yet.
I love it. And, I mean, you've actually touched on this before. The next question is, have you experienced the death of a loved one?
I have. Losing my father in 2015 was the worst thing that's ever happened to me in my life. That is a 0.0 in my life that turned things around for me. It was, yeah, it's defined who I am. It's defined who I am. That is a real changing point.
I mean, at 35, it's super young to have lost your dad.
It was horrible, Mark. Honest to God. The only thing that's got me through it is I was super close to my dad. I'm closer to my dad than I ever have been to my mum. Like, me and my dad were best pals. I remember I said this at his funeral. Actually, I did the speech at his funeral, and I remember when I was 14 years old, and I came home drunk for the first time ever. I think the police brought me home drunk, and I was like, my dad. Yeah, I know. My dad was there. He spoke to me. I got up the next morning. I was hungover. He come and spoke to me. He's like, "You've been drinking, Rob?" And I was like, "Yeah, I have." "You know I have, Dad." He goes, "Right, I heard you talking to your mates. Heard you saying how much you drank." He goes, "Don't lie about things like that. It's not cool." And they know. All right. He goes, "Right, you're coming for a drink with me." And I'm like, "Okay." Bear in mind, my dad is a Geordie, old school Geordie. And he took me to the pub at 14-year-olds. And I was like, I'm ready for the roasting. I'm ready for the telling off. So we had a drink. And he just want another one. I'm like, yeah, sure. Bear in mind, at this age, like, that 1 pint was probably enough.
It's enough for me at the moment, to be honest.
Yeah, you know what I mean? And I'm like, and I said, what's this? Come on, Dad, get it over with. He's like, look, honestly, my dad lost his father. I think he would have been 42. My dad would have been like 17, 18.
Good grief.
Yeah, killed in a road accident. It's an awful story. And my dad never got to have a drink with his dad. And he just said he'd been waiting to have a drink with me. So he took me out and had a drink with me.
That's really
that was
nice.
it. He'd been waiting all these years for me to start drinking. And then he just took me out and had a drink with me in the pub. And that was it. And that's something that carried on right up until he passed away. We used to go for a drink with my dad all the time. Just take him down the pub, me and my brother-in-law, and just have a pint with him and just talk.
Do you feel like, because he didn't come down on you like a ton of bricks for that it perhaps helped you understand boozing more than a bollocking ever would have done?
Yeah. He told me, because I've done everything you're going to do, don't bring it home, because I've raised you to be sensible. I've raised you to know what's right and wrong, what you should and shouldn't do. You go out there and do it. And that was it. There was no, like, don't do this, don't do that, don't do this. It was like, look, I've raised you for this amount of time. You're not stupid. You know what you should do. You know what you shouldn't do. And that was it. That was the trust he put in me.
What a lovely story that is.
Mate, honest to God, there was one thing I wanted to talk about, because when my dad died, like, the whole family gathered round and we were all together, and I found it really hard because everybody was talking about what it meant to themselves and how they were going to cope, and it was very insular, where I was like, my dad had always told me when he dies, he doesn't want people to be sad because he's had a really good life. He goes, I made it, I did it, I achieved it. I'm paraphrasing, but he wanted his legacy to be that he's raised good people. He left a positive mark on life, and it would be an insult to him. Again, I'm paraphrasing, it wasn't the exact words. It'd be an insult to him to retreat into yourself and grieve and let it ruin your life. He wanted us to go out and flourish, and that's John Maltman's son. That's what he's doing. Keep the name going. And there's Paul Heyman actually said this in an interview, weirdly, like, your family has to progress. If you're not better than the last generation, then your whole family's not progressing.
Right.
And that's something that I try and live my life to the best I can do it in honor of how my father raised me. That's what I want to do with my life, that I hope will, when it's my time, my daughter does the same thing. That's my attitude towards it. And this is the story. Oh, God, if I cry, right, I apologise in advance. But he passed away in 2015. My dad's a Geordie, Newcastle United fan. I'm a Newcastle fan. I love my football. And I was working in wrestling, doing the announcing, and I started to flirt in and out of this football announcing gig. And I did a few little gigs here and there. But I did the wrestling ones. Sorry, I did like Ric Flair and Bret Hart. And it was very much where I was. And the guy who's now my boss phoned me up and he said, like, Rob, Newcastle fan, I've got an opportunity for you. Do you want to interview Alan Shearer at an event? And I'm assuming you know who Alan Shearer is, Mark, right?
Even I know who Alan Shearer is, mate.
Yeah, well, Newcastle United legend. He's the record goal scorer in the Premier League, the record goal scorer in Newcastle United. He's an absolute legend. And I was given this opportunity to interview Shearer. And my heart's beating now, man. And it was Mansfield Town Football Club. There's at least 1,000 people in the stands. We were outside, and there's me sitting next to a Newcastle legend, and I was so nervous, I was shaking, and I legitimately just thought back to myself and say, I kind of felt my dad's presence with me, and it was just that moment of like, I'm living my life to the best, and I'm making him proud, and that's John Maltman's son up there with a bloody Newcastle United legend. And I just went out there, and even to the point, we were talking about it in the office, and my boss was like, you did a great job then, Rob, you really like, because I was like, I could have done better, and he's like, Rob, you were amazing. And that, to me, is the legacy that I want to achieve. That's how I look at death of someone to continue the legacy.
That's so good to hear. And my outlook on life is very similar to that. I came to that conclusion by researching my own humanism, essentially.
Yeah.
Whereas you've come to that from a life-changing event. And that's incredibly powerful.
Thank you, man. Thank you. I want to make sure that every life that I touch, every person I meet along the way, when it does come down to it, like, do you know what? He did all right, and this is how I'm going to remember him, or this is the lesson that he taught me. My daughter, for sure, but maybe not yourself. I don't think I've taught you anything. But like, I'd like to just be like,
I think you just did in a lot of ways.
Well, do you know what I mean? Like, do you know? I just want to I want people's lives to be better. And if I'm not about to see it, that's fine. Yeah. I just like to think I've had a positive effect that's going to I'd be arrogant to say change people's lives for the better.
Okay, so yes. After that brilliant story, we are going to talk about your own funeral now, Rob. Do you want to be buried or cremated?
I'd never thought of this till you sent me through the questions here, and I think I'd be cremated. I think that the idea of my body just taking up space in a graveyard somewhere, it seems pointless to me. I'm done with the body. I'm done with it. Like, let's just cremate me. I'll be in an urn. I'll be in a box, and whatever the family need to do, whether they want to bury that box and have a gravestone, or whether they want an urn, so whatever they want to do with it, whatever makes them better, whatever helps them, fine. I'm very much of the opinion you don't need to go and see a stone to remember me.
No, fair enough.
Do you know what I mean? I see people who've got plaques. And bear in mind, we've got a bench for my dad at Wicksteed Park in Kettering that we go to every year on his birthday, and we do all these cool things. But I don't need a plaque, a stone, a bench to remember my dad. I remember him every single day of my life.
Yeah.
So cremate me, put me in a box, throw me in the water. I'm not bothered about that. It doesn't matter to me. I'm done with the body.
Well, yeah, good point. So, what reading would you like to be read at your funeral? Have you thought about that?
I quite like. There's a story. I told you the story. I did my dad's speech. My dad told me this when I worked with him when I was learning to bake in the bakery, as it happens. And he told me this story that I read at his funeral, and I think it fits quite nicely. It's about a king who had a long, lengthy reign, over his people, and he was loved by the people, and the society underneath him was prosperous, and businesses were booming, and happiness was there, and everything worked. He was a great beloved king who lived and died on the throne, and then his son became king afterwards, and the community underneath failed, and they struggled, and no one liked him, and he raised taxes, and it was a horrible thing, chalk and cheese between the two kings. And one day, an old woman who'd lived under both reigns went up to the new king and said, "You know what? You're nothing like your father." And he went, "I am. He did it his way, and I'm doing it my way." I like that.
Ha.
Because as much as every boy doesn't want to become their father, I have. Like, I am him. I am the second coming of John Maltman. It's unreal. But I've done it my own way. I've become myself, and I've come kind of full circle. So that I don't need a religious text. I don't need a poem. I just want, if I could find the perfect positive thing to get that across, go and live your lives and just remember him when you can. That's kind of what I want. I went to a funeral when I worked in the radio business. I knew a guy that passed away, one of the radio presenters, and a DJ's funeral is one of the greatest things because it's all music. They pick all the songs that have meant something to them throughout their lives. There's minimal reasons. It's kind of like a musical almost, where it's like, right,
yeah.
And this is that point when he first met his wife, and this is what he was going through here, and it was like all these wonderful songs from his whole life played at this funeral, and it was like the songs took on a new meaning because I knew what they meant to the fella who had passed away.
Right.
And I always like that as well, because music is it's the great language and the great communicator amongst us all. Like, no matter who you are in this world, wherever you identify as, music, it's a universal thing. So I quite like that idea.
Well, you have preempted the next question, which is, what music tracks would you select for the entrance, reflection, and exit parts of your funeral?
The only song I'm 100% certain that I want is Elvis Presley, "How Great Thou Art."
Okay.
Because that's what my dad had at his, and I think I would quite like to keep that tradition going along. Bear in mind, I'm named after my father. Like, his middle name was Robert. Like, I've got that is a Maltman family name, and I've got it. And I like tradition. I like things, keeping memories alive and keeping traditions alive. And I think "How Great Thou Art" would be a nice touch because it's got that story and it's got that connection with the history of the family and potentially a connection with the future of the family, for all I know. Entrance and exit, I don't know. It'd be quite nice to have my old wrestling theme tune as an entrance, wouldn't it? It'd be quite nice, just a little flashback to that. Like,
what was your wrestling
drowning
entrance
pool
theme?
and bodies, I think.
Oh, good grief.
No, I don't know, man. I've never really thought about it. I think that would be funny, but that is the wrong song, isn't it?
Drowning pool by bodies. I mean, you can literally have whatever you want. I've had everything from the theme tune from Friends to Another One Bites the Dust, mate. You can have what you want. If you want Bodies by Drowning Pool, you can have it.
It'd be nice to think like the wrestling community would remember me then and be there in person to hear it and get the joke. If not, it's a really awkward moment, isn't it?
I mean,
no one from the wrestling community turns up and I've completely forgotten out of that world and I'm playing that and everyone's like, what the hell is this?
I mean, as lyrics go for a funeral, that's right up there with...
It's not very tasteful, is it?
No, with Burn, 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 the Ring of Fire.
Worse.
Well, yeah, that one's also... I've also had that one as well.
There's a certain amount of comedy to that and kitsch to that, isn't there? Like the Countdown theme tune. I quite like that.
Oh, you are the worst. The Countdown theme tune.
I'm surprised you've not had that one yet.
If you could time the Countdown theme to go with the curtains perfectly, that would be a massive win, wouldn't it?
I think so, yeah. I like the idea of that awkward joke.
Oh,
that awkward moment where everyone's like, should I laugh at this? Because I really shouldn't. You know, like a funeral is traditionally somber, everyone wears black, and it's a remembrance thing. I quite like the idea of that awkward joke that pricks that, takes it all away and makes people giggle. And it's like, that's who that man was. He wasn't this miserable person who played all this sad music.
Yeah.
He was that idiot that made a stupid joke when it wasn't meant to be and have a giggle about it. I like that more than the somber stuff.
Now, I've done funny funerals. I really have. And I like those. You You have to balance it right and have the funny and then the somber goodbye. But you don't actually have to do that. I'm just completely going to contradict myself and say, if you want the countdown theme, when the celebrant or vicar or whatever is closing those curtains, you can do it. I say it every time on this podcast. Your funeral is your funeral.
That's the whole point of it, like a celebration of a life lived and a reflection of who that person was, not an identikit funeral.
Yeah. Yeah, and I've had someone turn up late to their own funeral. That was a favourite.
Amazing. Absolutely amazing.
That was favourite. I did like that.
That must have got a laugh. Like, you can't get a laugh out of that.
It did. And I've had people with no flowers because they didn't like flowers, and I've had people with all the flowers in the world. It is up to you. You can have your funeral your way, and I genuinely think people need to tell people. I want Bodies by Drowning Pool to be played at my funeral. I want Elvis at my funeral. And by encouraging people to think about their own funeral, it actually makes it easier for the family if they know that they're getting it right.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think all people kind of want to see their own funeral, don't they? I think all people want to have that level of control where they're like, oh, this is how I want it to go. This is how I want the final bit of my life to be. And you kind of want to see who turns up, don't you? You kind of like, who's going to be there? You do. Like, that ego in us, we all want to say, who's actually going to turn up at my funeral? You know you do.
So, Rob, I just want to say thank you for coming on to Life's Milestones. Where can people find you on the internet?
I'm tucked away at the moment. I'm working for a company called Superstar Speakers. If anyone wants to find us on Facebook or the website, please come along. We do specialise in live events, but at the moment we are working really hard in the memorabilia sector. So, like, if football and sport is your thing and memorabilia is your thing, then come and see Superstar Speakers. It's superstarspeakers.co.uk, and just come and say hello.
Mate, it's been a pleasure. I always like having a sit and a chat with you. And even though it was quite a serious one, it never is quite that serious with you. So thank you.
That's my legacy. Like, that'll be what's on my tombstone. Even though it's serious, it's never quite that serious with you. It's like that's my epitaph right there.
You can have that line, mate. I'll give that to you.
Yeah, and you can have the one, are you scared of death? No, I'm just not ready for it.
Yeah. I'd just like to say one more time, thank you so much to Rob for coming and having a chat with me on Life's Milestones. This lockdown has been an isolating time for everybody, and this podcast has really given me the opportunity in a lot of ways to catch up with some people that I am very fond of, and it just felt like sitting with Rob. We weren't doing Life's Milestones, we were just having a chat and catching up and just being Mark and Rob, and I had such a good time interviewing. I hope you enjoyed the interview too. Do check out the Superstar Speakers stuff that they're doing at the moment with memorabilia, because there's lots of cool stuff going on there if you are a sports fan. I've done so well keeping up to date with the playlist, and at this time it's all up to date apart from Rob's choices, so I'll be adding those in the next few days and I'll put it up on Twitter when I do that. I'm very pleased with myself. I didn't think I'd keep up to date with that, but I have, so go me for being good. And that's it. I just want to say thank you for joining me for Life's Milestones, and I'll see you in a fortnight. Life's Milestones is a podcast on the We Made This podcast network. The show's host is me, Mark Adams. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at MarkAdamsHC. You can also find me on Facebook. Just search for Mark Adams Humanist Celebrant. My website is humanist.org.uk/Mark Adams. Regular listeners to the podcast can claim a 10% discount on my fees for a naming ceremony or wedding. Just make sure you quote Milestones when you get in touch. The theme tune for Life's Milestones is performed by Zach Reagan, and the logo was created by Carl Bryan. Follow the show on Twitter at Life's Milestones. Thank you for listening.
elsewhere on We Made This. Cerebral Jukebox.
Yeah, because we were talking about this. We've talked about the different covers there are. Now, you yourself, I thought I'd found a nice little sort of hidden gem here, because you yourself were in a band called Bleeder, or still are in a band called Bleeder.
Yeah.
And when I was looking on Spotify just for different covers of the song, I noticed there is a cover of this by a band called Bleeder. And I was like, oh, brilliant! This is what Niall's not told me, is that he's actually done a cover of it that got released.
Shipwrecked and Comatose, a Red Dwarf podcast.
Maybe I'm not coming at it from an educated point of view, because, you know, not only am I a man, I'm gay. You know, I don't deal with pregnancy.
Are you?
And
have you ever told us that before?
I was trying to make a serious point.
Hey, we love you, you know that.
Yeah, but yeah, you have got a good point, Colin. This is a bit of a sausage fest episode. Maybe we should have got a lady involved.
Real Asian podcast.
You know, so I really do feel that there's this, and whether it's an invisible weight on our shoulders to be able to be like this ideal child, or like, you know, just being able to not drag the family name down for whatever reason, even if it's self-imposed,
even if it's just completely made up in your mind.
Right, like you know, Brian, you were just saying about your friend who said they felt like they couldn't come out to you.
Check out all of these shows and more on the We Made This podcast network.